been talking a lot about progress. You mentioned the PDF conundrum. Oh man, I remember being there. It's 6 o'clock. Everyone's left the job site. I'm entering progress to get to the month end, and I look at the PDF, and I cannot tell for the life of me if the person wrote an 8 or a 6 on the date. And now I am sitting there sweating bullets because I got to put this in. It's on the critical path. If it blows it up, I'm going to have bigger problems.
The process that I'm following right now is a weekly update. And so we collect all of our status across the job, and then I go into the weekly trade partner meeting with all the foremen, and we do that's when we look at our 3-week plan and really dial in on our 1-week plan. And the goal there is when we walk out of that meeting, everyone that's producing work for that job on the trade partner level has agreed to their commitments for that next week. And so to have someone that can see across all of them and how those data handoffs happen, and like, hey, because of what you're doing, that's going to impact this person, this person, this person. So let's talk about what you're doing to help them. But I also need to talk to these people on the back end of things and make sure that we're dialed and ready to fly when your time comes, because it's pushing later than we thought.
Hi, folks. A quick one before we dive into this week's episode. Our book, The Critical Path Career, How to Advance in Construction and Planning and Scheduling, is out now, and you can order it on Amazon. We'll include a link below. This is a great way to show support for the Beyond Deadlines podcast, and Greg and I have worked extremely hard taking everything we know in our 30 years of experience, plus everything we've picked up from shooting this podcast, and we've tried to pack it into an information-dense book that you can use right away. In the book, we have specific strategies on how to get a raise, how to get a promotion, and find a new job. We include 26 of the best interview questions that we have come across, in addition to 34 specific impact ideas that you can go use on your projects today. We want to thank everyone who's shown us support so far, and enjoy this week's episode. Welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that planning and schedule leaders come across on a day-to-day basis. My name is Micah Pipo, and I'm the CEO of Movar North America, a project management consultancy.
My name is Greg Lawton. I'm the CEO of Nodes and Links, an AI schedule management.
And I'm Miles Haynes. I'm a senior scheduler for Oakland Construction in the commercial space in the Intermountain West region. And I've started bootstrapping software called Stride to help with progressing your schedule.
On today's episode, we are going to dive deep into schedule progressing, cover all the nitty gritty, the tactics. So Miles, to get you on the hot seat and get things a little sweaty, let's say a medium-sized general contractor has brought you in with the specific goal of setting up a really strong progressing program. They got a variety of different things going on right now, and they really want to set a standard and then improve upon that standard. How do you do it?
I think for me, I would start with, like, we all face this as schedulers, right? It's like we got to get the data to do anything with it. And so finding a way to incentivize or create an accountability system around getting the data. And for me, for a mid-sized GC, if I was sitting with superintendents, that's your person that you're trying to get the data out of. So how can we facilitate them putting in the data that's helpful to them, and not just like, oh, I've got to do this to get my scheduler what they need, and it's a bother. And the first thing that I would go to is probably like the daily huddle system or their daily logs. Those are things that they have to do for their job already. It's not an add-on for the scheduler.
Yeah, let's break that down a little bit for maybe people who don't understand what a daily huddle is. Like what is that, and how are you interjecting into it?
Yeah, so what I've seen, at least for the daily huddle system, it's a short half-hour meeting where you pull in all the foremen that are on the job site producing the work for your job site, and you're going over just key items for that day. So it's very granular, and so they'll cover, hey, what are our roadblocks in safety? What are our roadblocks in deliveries and logistics over the next couple of days? What are the problems around that going to be? And let's talk about the schedule of hey, these are the things that we should have been doing today that we noticed as a management group as we walked around weren't happening. Let's talk about what the issues were with those and kind of see what we can do to get around those. There's several things that could be as far as schedules. Was it a trade partner issue? They didn't supply enough manpower to be in all the spaces that they had been asked to be in, or was it deliveries? Was it weather? Were we as a general contractor in the way for whatever reason? Is it an RFI? So getting through those types of issues to remove those roadblocks for them.
Now, when you're sitting in those huddles, would you be diagnosing what's currently going on? So you're looking at how they are currently capturing progress, or are you looking at doing, kind of like a mini pilot to get some progress into the schedule? Maybe just you're a fly in the wall in the back and you are now trying to figure out how are you attacking those daily huddles?
Yeah, this is definitely something I'm thinking about currently in my role. Well, if I have the opportunity to be there, which on my current project at a midsize GC, I have the opportunity to be there every day. And for a lot of schedulers, that's not the reality. You're probably bouncing from multiple projects throughout the week, so that becomes kind of an interesting puzzle with this. But if you did have the option to basically collect status every day, would you want that? What would you do with that? It's kind of crossed my mind, and we can talk about that another, down the road. But the process that I'm following right now is a weekly update. And so we collect all of our status across the job, and then I go into the weekly trade partner meeting with all the foremen, and that's when we look at our 3-week plan and really dial in on our 1-week plan. And the goal there is when we walk out of that meeting, everyone that's producing work for that job on the trade partner level has agreed to their commitments for that next week. And then as we sit in those smaller meetings throughout the week, it's like, hey, on Tuesday we said we'd do this. I notice we're not here. What's our issue? And so we can have that accountability and escalate issues that we feel like we need to or not. And so I'm collecting the status. It's nice for me at the end of the week to know we've gone every day, and so our data set is really good by the end of the week for me to put into the schedule to reflect what happened, is what's happening right now. I'm not progressing every day, but that is on my mind. Is there benefits or detractions from doing that?
I love that. I love that we're just getting right into the weeds and getting super tactical with it. You mentioned something about accountability. We're gonna kind of be pulling out and diving back in. But if you're looking to set up a progressing program across multiple projects,
Mm-hmm.
and you're one man that I know of, you can't split into clones yet. Who knows, right? You're a talented guy. But how do you make sure that as you start to dial in what good looks like, how do you make sure that spreads itself across to other projects?
Yeah, that's something that we're working on with Stride right now. The process that I got sick of doing was collecting status from PDFs for P6 and putting them in for a myriad of reasons. I didn't like that. And one of the benefits of it is, hey, general superintendent that's over multiple jobs, or hey, field operations director that's over the whole enterprise for our company, they care about getting the schedules updated across the enterprise, and some people are better about doing it than others. And so with a software platform instead of PDFs, it's a lot easier to just go in and say, like, did this update happen or not, and hold the team accountable rather than, hey, send me an email so I know that you sent it, and I've got to check 500 emails for all the superintendents across our enterprise to make sure they're doing their job. Just kind of that quick clarity. There were 300 items that needed to be statused on this project this week, and only 30 of them got updated. So obviously the team wasn't using the daily huddle system, talking about roadblocks and removing those for their trade partners, things like that. So finding ways to, like you said, create that clarity of field processes for the people that care.
Yeah, let's keep on picking on this one just a little bit. So, you do have software solutions like Stride. We'll get into that. You mentioned the PDF type process. That one is super manual data intensive. I'm still just wondering, how can you really clarify what the goal is of progressing for everyone and make sure that can get out project to project to project? Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I think it'd be a training thing, right? Of like, what's the point for superintendent? And, there are superintendents that maybe don't understand this or newer to the industry and put in a hot seat of, what is the point of managing your schedule, of reflecting it accurately instead of just progress, like, yeah, it's on track, and deliver that to the owner and we'll make it work, and kind of cowboy it, as some people say, But teaching them, like, hey, if we manage this right now, it'll tell us what we need to manage next week and 3 weeks from now. And so you're not thinking every week and every day, how am I going to make this happen? There's CPM softwares that basically do that for you if you had a good plan from the beginning, so you're not resequencing things the whole time. And if you're just capturing where you're at per the plan, then you can just keep rolling instead of making a new plan all the time.
I find this really interesting, because what I'm hearing is really two things. Number one is progressing is actually a complex thing in itself, and number two is there's a myriad of reasons why you actually do progressing, and it's one of these interconnected webs where it's more that you just hurt if you don't do it properly for many reasons, as opposed to you get a huge amount of benefit if you do it really, really well all the time. A question in my mind, as a person who's really just focused on data architecture, data structure, algorithms, these kinds of things. What is a progress? Like, I'm sure there'll be some kind of norms or systems about how you decide how to progress something. Like, and I mean more than I've got when I started, some scheduling friends who would just go, it's 0% until it's done, then it's 100%. And I'm like, that's a 4-week set of tasks. I don't think that's how this works, but right. I was too junior at the time to go, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a million ways, like not a million, but there's several ways at least to do this in the scheduling world. And we could talk about like the master schedule and progressing that. And then there's like the field execution schedule and how do we handle that. And I think some people keep those things separate, and that's their operating system. You have your field 3-week look ahead and however you want to do that. And then that somehow cascades up to the master schedule. In other worlds, which is actually mine, it's all just one schedule. Like we hold a level 4 to 5 in P6, which I know a lot of people don't do. So that's kind of interesting. So that's one thing to talk about here.
4 to 5, you're talking level 4, level 5?
Level 4, level 5, yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's like a 1 to 3 day activity maybe, instead of 5 to 20 or so. And so we're holding pretty granular tasks in our P6, that's our master schedule and what is getting statused in the field. There's also what I've seen in talking to people on the Stride side of things is, for different industries, people care about different sets of data. Like for me in commercial contracting, it's just dates. Like we're more, however sophisticated that sounds, it's just basically dates, and that'll calculate your duration % complete, as we know, in our CPM model. But we don't care about physical % complete. We just don't have the manpower to go track those things down, and it's not as easy as how many linear feet of pipe is it. We have to do a takeoff of, brick and stuff like that. No one's taking the time to do that right now.
I am so glad I didn't make a duration % complete joke. Anyway. Please continue.
Yeah, but oil and gas and heavy civil construction, where things are really linear for them, they really care about physical % complete, and it's a lot easier to capture, and resource % complete. So it depends really on what sector you're in, what your operating process is. But as I've kind of been on this early journey of my career, what I've noticed, for myself at least, is I really care about how can we help the field execute. And so whatever that most granular level of your schedule is what I care about right now.
Yeah, I want to dive into that level 5 schedule and how you integrate it up to master in just a second. But I did have a quick question on this idea of duration % complete when you're talking about, commercial. So to me, it would make sense if you're at that granular of a level, you're at 1 to 3 days, you're mostly just looking at activity completions.
Yep.
And that kind of gives you, is that where your brain's at then? Because you don't have like a 30-day activity and that, 10 days, you're 15% done. So is that how your system looks at it then?
Yeah, we have a rule in house that it's like, hey, try to break things down smaller than 20 days because, I'll use masonry again. You're 4 days into your masonry activity that's 20 days long, and maybe they're slow to set up at the start. It's just hard to track, like, are we going to hit it at day 20 or not? And so what we try to do is just sequence it out. Like, okay, we'll have however many sequences throughout the floor or against this, facade elevation. And so it's a smaller chunk, and we can go see, on day 2 if we're going to make it to day 4 and be done or not. That's just how we've decided to do things. Again, tons of ways to do it.
I think there's a key point here I'm kind of taking away, and people listening should probably take away, which actually is there's a large amount of philosophical thinking that actually goes into progressing. Progress isn't just turning up with a stopwatch or an abacus and counting things. Progressing is thinking about how you're going to actually structure the thing you're going to measure progress against, and then figuring out what exactly you're counting in a way that helps the project. A lot of the projects that I've worked on have just used days complete because they had 30, 40, 50%. And then, you get day activity, you get 60-day activities and you're at day 58. And you're like, all right, so that'll be done in 2 days. And they're like, no, it's extended by 30. You're like, wait a minute, this is a big issue. What are some of the, the techniques or some of your tactics around, let's say that something is slipping like that. How would you have that conversation, and how would you then go ahead and reflect it in the data?
It's a great question. I think it all comes back to the daily huddle with the people that are actually installing it. And it's great for me on my current project to be with them. It's kind of my first time that I've had the opportunity to be with them day after day and see the impact that this can make. But, if you can communicate, the other hard part about breaking things down so small is communicating clearly, okay, here's our drawings, here's our sequence map per the drawings, and these are the activities in that sequence map so that you know exactly where you need to be. Okay, and we'll talk about it today. But then if you have something that's a 6-day activity, let's say, so it's a little over the week that you're working in, but you can see immediately in the daily huddle system, like, hey, this is a 6-day duration, and you've missed it 3 times. I highly doubt that we're going to hit that unless you start to bring more people, and that might not even be possible if it's a small room. Like, we can't fit more bodies in there, or you've missed it 3 times. What's the reason? Oh, there's an RFI on this. I need to pressure the owner and architect to get us that response because we have 3 days of float on this activity, and they're holding us up, and you were ready to go, and that sort of thing. So what I end up doing is through that daily huddle capture, if they miss and it's a valid enough reason or whatever, that brings information to me as a scheduler on a weekly basis of, hey, there was an impact here. I'm going to capture that in the schedule. I'm going to model how that's pushed our critical path or, the float path for that activity at least. Maybe it doesn't hit criticality, but it's eaten up float. And what has that done to how much we're going to have to complete towards the end of the job, our S curve there. We're going to be just stacking because we keep slipping. We're finishing things within the week, but everything finishes 2 days late. And so what does that do to the end? It's just a death by 1,000 cuts. And so we capture that. I want to probe
on something you said then, and this is actually now genuinely for my interest. You said essentially the answer is the weekly huddle, which I take as you have to be embedded in the team. You have to know what's going on and the reasons why things are going on. But I've worked on projects that are enormous. I'm talking like 10,000 people kind of thing. And, if I talk to the head of project controls or the head of scheduling or the head of PM, they physically can't be in every huddle and they can't understand what's happening in every huddle. So 2 questions. What happens if you're ill on the day of the huddle? How do you solve that immediate problem right there? And 2 is, how do you solve the problem if this thing's just too large to huddle all the time?
So to your second question, I think it's just a measure. I don't know. We're in this the speculating realm. I don't live this, but I would think you break it down into small enough chunks that then escalate up, so that someone could be there on a project that large, I'm sure you had a small army of schedulers, not just one person overseeing the whole thing.
By the way, I'll sorry to interrupt you. I'm gonna jump in there because I'm genuinely trying to take something away there, which is, okay, the job design or the organization design has to be different based on the size of the project, because if the solution to really controlling progress is huddling and being really embedded on the project, at a certain size, I physically can't be embedded on. So I'm going to have to set up an organizational structure and a document structure and a coding structure and a methodology, and there's quite a lot of management things I'm going to have to do to make that not break down. That's what I'm taking away from what you just said.
Oh, that's great. And I mean, if the scheduler can't be there, who does it next to your first question? And it's how do we empower superintendents to be able to capture that status, to be able to run the daily huddle, at least. The weekly huddle, now there's different ways to go, like with everything. There's different ways to go about it. Like right now I'm in the weekly huddle, and so I'm live schedule, what are our commitments, but you could run a large job without the scheduler there, and you have your print of your schedule, and you say, this is what our commitments say. Okay, I'm going to make some notes for the next week, and then the scheduler will update that when they're available. And that's like pretty good if that's all you can do, right? The scheduler can't physically be there. And so there's always a workaround, but you know, to your point, it's like, how do we set up the data structure so that we're flowing from the person installing and what the roadblocks are, and make sure that that's cascading up into what our data is, instead of someone just walking the site and being like, yeah, we're probably, or a superintendent just pencil whipping and like, yeah, we're 65% done with it.
It's always ends in a zero, though. They're never 65. It's always 60, 70, 80.
Yeah. I'm going to say something a bit extreme. I don't actually know if this is a true statement. Based on what you're saying, I'm just logically following through. Then I was thinking, okay, so what's the real role of a scheduler in progress updating, barring the just ticking documents off? And what came to mind was cataclysm protection. And what I mean by that is, from what you just said, I was thinking you can't divorce planning and progressing. They're integral in what they do. So, for example, if the scheduler's not there, you're saying the superintendent has the plan and they're going to break it down and make, well, someone's got to give them the plan of something. And then how then the performance of that changes the plan. And what I mean by cataclysm protection is, okay, you were like, there's always workarounds to these things. But why is it not the most common thing to not have schedulers on a job? Why do most companies spend an enormous sum of money on wages for people deeply skilled in this when they're capitalist organizations? Like, if they could just get rid of it, they would. And I was thinking, okay, well, then there's clearly some reason there. And it must just be the simple thing of, imagine how off-kilter things can go if someone isn't coordinating all of the little pieces. People in locus of a node can kind of coordinate themselves in a small pocket for a certain amount of time, but it's almost I don't know, silly analogy. If I roll marbles down a hill and I only let them roll a foot, they're not going to be that far apart. But if I let them roll down a kilometer, they might be very far apart. Is that a fair understanding of the system?
How far is a kilometer in miles?
It's about 0.65 or something.
Miles don't know, man. We're rocking.
Mile is so long, by the way. UK uses miles, Europe uses kilometers, and I prefer kilometers so much because, you know, your speedo, it ticks over so much faster. You're like 1 and 2 and 3. It's great. Anyway,
I would say yes to your question. I had another thought about it, but I can't remember now. I don't know if you had something to add or a question, Micah.
Well, I think
when Greg was talking, where my mind went was, I think, you know, how construction is set up is there are people who are out there building the job, and then there's overhead, and overhead costs money. So from a pure profitability sake, if you ignore all other avenues, sure, like get rid of the procurement team, get rid of the cost team, get rid of the safety team. I mean, you know, I'm figuratively speaking. Get your pitchforks out. But those are all overheads that cost them money, because hypothetically, if you don't have a project controls team on your job, you're not paying for them, that goes right into profit and into your pocket. However, there's a governance piece on this where if there's, like Greg, you were saying, if there's no one really watching where this ball is rolling, this thing can roll way out. And as we talked about earlier in the conversation, Miles, you'll have some superintendents that are good at doing this, but you'll have other superintendents that are good at orchestrating the job. They're technically smart, but may not have the skill set, want, care, need to actually go make this happen.
Yeah.
And they aren't incentivized to not. And so the ball can roll way down off course, many kilometers away. So I think, that's kind of where my mind went with it. It's a little bit of that governance and value thing.
The first thing that popped into my head too, as you were talking, was I think one of the biggest risks is handoffs of any kind in construction, whether it's from trade partner to trade partner, but also from superintendent to superintendent. You're not going to have one person running a large job. You're going to have several, and they might have a scope that, for an area, let's say you're self-performing concrete, and then you have a finish superintendent. Well, there's a handoff between those two at a certain point. We actually just had this situation happen, so I'm talking about it. But concrete still on track, not negative, but ate up their free float. And so it's like they're not pushing the finish technically into criticality, but you just ate up his free float too, or hers. And now we're worried about procurement of certain finishes coming on time, and we don't have wiggle room anymore. Things like that. And so how do we, like you said, like if a superintendent's just running it, they might only care about their area, or they might mostly care about their scope. And so to have someone that can see across all of them and how those data handoffs happen, and like, hey, because of what you're doing, that's going to impact this person, this person, this person. So let's talk about what you're doing to help them. But I also need to talk to these people on the back end of things and make sure that we're dialed and ready to fly when your time comes, because it's pushing later than we thought per the plan originally. But yeah, that's definitely kind of back to what you're saying, Greg. Definitely been something on my mind as new software solutions are being developed, AI is getting talked about, things like that. Is what is the role of a at least site scheduler going to be in several years from now? If the field team is more empowered, if it is easier for them to do those things, where does it break down? Is it a size of project and number of handoffs where that breaks down and you need someone to orchestrate it again, or not? Things like that are just kind of what I noodle.
Episode number 2 with Mr. Miles. The two things we didn't cover, which you brought up, and then we never got back to the L5, L4 integration. Before we jump, folks, I want to talk about something Miles put together. A brilliant piece of software that could definitely help out your projects. Tell me a little bit about Stride. We've been talking a lot about progress. You mentioned the PDF conundrum. Oh, man, I remember being there. It's 6 o'clock. Everyone's left the job site. I'm entering progress to get to the month end, and I look at the PDF, and I cannot tell for the life of me if the person wrote an 8 or a 6 on the date. And now I am sitting there sweating bullets because I got to put this in. It's on the critical path. If it blows it up, I'm going to have bigger problems. So tell me how Stride can help out on progressing.
Yeah, so it was just a problem that had bugged, I hid PDFs for years. I was thinking to myself, like, why did I go get an engineering degree to be doing data entry off of a PDF at my wage? That just doesn't seem fair to anyone here. There's got to be a better way. And so I tried the whole, maybe I'll just make something in Excel, and I just couldn't get it to, be good enough, I guess. There's so many little things. And so I reached out to a software developer locally, and we've been working on it part-time after hours. And so what Stride does is, one of my things was, I don't want a superintendent to look at it. They're getting thrown softwares and problems all day long for 10 to 12 hours a day. They don't want to pick up something new. So I'm going to hopefully make this look as much like the P6 PDF as possible. So it flows in the way that your WBS does. It has very similar but prettier banding. And the whole goal of that was they don't have to really go through some long and arduous training. And all they need to do is select their dates. They can just select actual. Like usually our guys will put an A beside something if it's an actual, or a little check mark. They can just hit the A if it's an actual on the date that's shown. If they want to select a different date, there's a date picker. one of the things that I really love about it is we do an update window when you upload your file, your P6 XML. So I'll say, I'm going to show up again next week, and this will be our next data date. So any dates within that range will become an actual, because by the time I see it as a scheduler, it's going to be in the past. So then they don't really have to think, is this a planned date? Is it an actual date? It's in that update time frame. It actualizes. Anyway, we've done everything we can to make it like as clickless as possible for superintendents to get you the date status that they need. And if, like you said, they have a note, they can just talk it into their iPad or their phone or scribble it with their Apple Pencil, and it'll turn into something that you can read. There's a bunch of filters to help out a scheduler too, like what didn't get updated, what do I want to review later if I marked that, things like that. And we're starting to work on the daily huddle system, so they can pull up, the superintendent can pull up, what am I doing just today? It shortens the list. And then as they walk the job, they can go mark, these are the misses that I'm going to bring up in the daily huddle with the trade partners, and we can work on those problems.
And this comes out of Stride and back into P6
Yep.
somehow?
So then you download the XML file. The reason why we like XML is we can just look at just the activities that got statused and not bring in the whole project like an XCR would. And so if it got updated, it updates through the import back to P6. If it didn't get touched in Stride, it's not going to do anything. Or if you planned something 6 months down the road, we're not touching that either. So there's some data integrity there. And so, yeah, so then I'm not spending my time on the, yes, that happened, yes, that happened, yes, that happened. It's we had a note here that I need to add a procurement item. It's going to push us out 3 weeks, or, oh, we need to resequence all of our air handlers to flow this way. Those are the things I'm working on now, not the, what did you do last week?
I really like that. And I think there's a definite space for these, I'll call it like a point solution, because I think that a lot of different software packages bring in just the whole kitchen sink. And I love that this just solves one specific problem, and it'll help those workflows. You don't have to worry about PDFs. One question before we jump that I really want to know is, what about kind of reporting and things like that? You mentioned it talks about activities that were late or status. What can you do in terms of reporting before you have to jump back into P6 and check things out?
Yeah, we do a change log now before you import. This is how things were versus where they're going to be, or hey, this is probably going to be out of sequence, or they selected a date that was actually 2 weeks ago because they didn't catch it, then things like that. But really what we've found is that a lot of people just want to solve the problem of, how do I get the data from the field? Like, that's such a headache. How do we make it easy? How do we get the right activity lines to the right people to status as easily as possible? And then how do we get that back to P6? And people that we've talked to are like, I'll do all the analysis in P6 or in another software. I just need to get it from the field. And so that's what we've really niched down on at this time anyway.
So where can people find a Stride?
Yeah, so our website is strideschedule.com, and we'll have a free trial available on our website for anybody that listens to this podcast or anybody else that wants to try it out for a little while, give it a spin. We're happy to take any feedback too. We're young and early and just want to solve a problem. I'm not like some entrepreneur. I'm a scheduler with a problem that wants to make things better. And so that's all I really care about.
You are 100% an entrepreneur. That's literally the definition. Well done.
Hey, that's coming from an entrepreneur too. So you got your badge that you can wear in your yurt that you are now.
Yeah.
If people are listening,
I'm on a family trip, yeah. Don't come to the mountains of Utah. They suck. So.
Oh man, I doubt that.
This place. Yeah.
I highly doubt that. Well, Miles, thank you so much for coming on. Folks, we'll include links to Stride and where to find Miles down below in the show notes. You can go find them and definitely give the program a whirl. It sounds super interesting. I'm going to give it a definite spin. Miles showed me a couple previews, and I am itching to get my fingers on it. From us at Beyond Deadlines, we hope your next status and progress meeting goes absolutely according to plan, and we'll see you on the next one.